JavaScript provides us with a wide variety of functions and constants that are useful when doing math. These are stored in the math object, so let's take a look. So we've seen the different ways of creating numbers and comparing numbers, but there are a few more things that we would want to do with numbers that aren't able to be done with just the simple operations that we have here. For instance, rounding numbers, getting random numbers, doing square roots or powers, or for instance, maybe operations like sine and cosine, the trigonomic functions that we would want to use, for instance, if we were doing some sort of geometry. Fortunately, JavaScript provides an object called math, and that's math with a capital M. And there are different properties and methods on this that relate to common mathematical operations. Let's say we want to create a random number. So we can create a variable called u. And to create a random number, we use our math object, so that's capital M-A-T-H. And then there are either properties or methods that we want to call on it. To get a random number, we want to do the random method. So we'll do math.random, and then use parentheses to call it. So if we refresh, go to our page, and we evaluate u, which is the number we just assigned to math.random's value, we'll see we get a number 0.407, blah, blah, blah. And this is because math.random returns a value between 0 and 1. Now, this may not be exactly what you want. You may have been wanting a number 0 through 10. Well, here's how we can do that. Because math.random will return a value between 0 and 1, the upper bounds is obviously 1. But if we wanted a number 0 through 10, our upper bounds for that range would be 10. So an easy way of doing that would be multiplying it by 10. So now if we refresh, we should now get a number between 0 and 10. We get 9.2. Again, every time we refresh it, we're going to get a different number because random, every time it is called, will give us a different number. So if we keep saving and refreshing, we should get, hopefully, numbers between 0 and 10. Now, obviously, the numbers that we get here are between 0 and 10, but they're not whole numbers. So what could we do? Well, we could round them. So let's take this whole expression here, our math.random times 10, and let's call another method that's on the math object called round. So what round will do is it'll take a number and round it to the nearest whole number. So again, what this will do is it'll round it to the nearest number. So now we get 1 in this case, but we should always get a whole number between 0 and 10. So let's take a look at what round does. So if we take a variable v and do math.round 2.3, v should be 2. And if we do 2.7, round should round up to 3. And then if we do 2.5, it'll round up to 3 as well. So math will round up from 0.5 and down for anything below 0.5. Now, what if you always want to round down? We can do math.floor. And if we put in 3.7, w should always be 3, so it'll always round down. If we want to do the opposite and always round up, we'll use math.ceil, and that's C-E-I-L, which is short for ceiling. And if we did, for instance, 6.2, math.ceil of 6.2 would be 7. Now, there are a couple other methods. For instance, if you wanted to take the power of something, we could do var y equals math.pow, and this takes two arguments, the base and the exponent. So if you want to take 2 to the power of 5, we'll do math.pow 2, 5. And y would be 32. And we also have the square root method. So we'll take z equals math.sqrt for square root. So this just takes one argument. So say the square root of 4, z should be 2. And this will work for things that won't square root so easily, like 5. You get 2.2, or for instance, square root of 2. We'll get 1.414. Now, there are quite a few different things in the math object that you may want to use at certain points in your programs. You'll know them when you need them, for instance, sine or cosine. But we can take a look at what our options are just by typing in math into the console here and expanding it out. You can see we have things like floor, ceil, rand, pow, things like min and max, which are nice. For instance, if we take math.min and pass in 2 and 4, it'll return us the minimum. And similarly, maximum will return the maximum. And you can add as many arguments as you like to math.min or max. So anytime you need the min or max, you can get those. Sine, cosine, and tangent are available in sine, cos, and tan, as well as arcsine, arctan, and arccos in acos, asine, and atan. Again, depending on what you need to do, you may never use these, but if you're doing some interesting geometry, obviously these will come in handy. Also, we have ABS, which will return the absolute value. So math.abs of -1 would be 1. Finally, you'll see up here we have some things that aren't methods, but instead they are constants, or simply properties of the math object. So if you need a pretty decent value of pi, you can do math.pi, so math.pi, which is 3.14159, down a few decimal places. Or if you need e, or if you need the natural log of 10, or the value of e, or the square root of 2, these are all constants that are stored in the math object. Anytime you need to refer to it, I recommend just taking a look at math in your console, and it will give you the list of constants and functions that will be commonly used in mathematical operations. So now you should be familiar with all the tools you'll need to use when doing math in JavaScript.